for item 7.2.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Atkin and council members. I'm Catherine Ferp. I'm the housing coordinator with Economic Development and Housing Unit. And I have a presentation for you. There we go. We're here tonight to talk about a draft homeless strategy. I want to give a little background about homelessness. Homelessness and housing instability have wide-ranging negative impacts. Individuals and families who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of becoming homeless are often unable to reach their full potential at home, at school, or at work in the community. It's a symptom of a wide-ranging group of problems, and the high cost of housing in Alameda County increases the cases of homelessness and prevents another barrier to its prevention. We last week conducted the every other year annual homeless census. We won't get that data out until later in the year. And due to the small size and transient nature of the homeless population in the city of Emeryville, we don't collect data specifically on the number of people experiencing homelessness in this city. I do want to highlight some of the 2003 homeless count findings, and that is that there's about 4,300 people experiencing homelessness in the county. There has been less homelessness for children, and 86% of those families that have children are actually sheltered. They're not on the street. People with severe mental illnesses experiencing homelessness have increased, and there's been a decrease in the number of homeless population having chronic substance abuse. I want to talk a little bit about our local resources, what we are doing currently for homelessness. We use some of our CDBG money to pay for the Homeless Management Information System. That's the HMIS. We pay our portion. We also use some CDBG monies to fund Berkeley Food and Housing Programs, shelter programs to the north of us. We use general funds for the North County Winter Relief Program, which is senior shelter beds over at St. Mary's, and warming centers in downtown Oakland. We also fund Berkeley Food and Housing Program for an Emeryville outreach program where they're doing street outreach, engagement, harm reduction, and case management. That contract has just started. We're just ramping up. And we also have a food security contract with ECAP that we support them. I've been working with staff, with consultants, and with the housing committee, and we've come up with a draft homeless strategic plan. The goals are to prevent at-risk persons becoming homeless or returning to homelessness, to remove barriers to accessing homeless services, and to participate in regional strategies for preventing and reducing homelessness, and to provide housing services to people facing homelessness or formerly homeless. I'm going to go into some detail on each of these goals. The first goal, which I stated earlier, was prevent at-risk persons from becoming homeless. We're going to do that through providing information and support efforts in rapid rehousing efforts, which is this is a effort to, when people are at risk of homelessness or have just become homeless, to try and get them back into housing quicker. We know that people who spend a great deal of time on the streets start to have additional barriers to achieving housing. So keeping people from living out of doors and getting people back into housing as soon as possible is a goal to reduce a lot of other problems that come up. There's an Alameda County boomerang funds. So the Alameda County took their boomerang funds that they got at the dissolution of redevelopment and put some aside specifically for homelessness and rapid rehousing. So working on a task force at the county to go through the process of issuing an RFP for those funds. We work with EUSD staff when families are at risk of homelessness or experiencing homelessness, and I work with the staff to try and find solutions to whatever the specific barriers they have to being housed. And we provide financial management. We are planning to provide financial management, independent living resources, and training to low-income households. The second goal is to remove barriers to accessing homeless services. This is for people who are homeless. There's a great deal of barriers for them to get the services that they need. So transportation is a barrier, so we're trying to remove that barrier. We actually currently provide bus passes for them to go to a service and then come back. One of our goals is to improve security of possessions for people experiencing homelessness. This is actually a big deal because people will refuse to leave their possessions to get the services that they need, and we haven't really found a great way of dealing with this, but it's one of our goals to provide services to people experiencing homelessness in a shared or consolidated space to improve efficiency. This is so that homeless people don't have to go here for this and here for that and there for this. We're trying to consolidate the services so there's just one place where they need to go. In a like sort of way, we want to make sure that every time they do access services, they don't have to say the same thing or go through the same intake process, which is a real barrier for people. So very personal information. So try and make that a little bit more streamlined than it is right now, and to provide street outreach and engage people experiencing homelessness, provide information about available resources, and to help them access those resources. There's still more on this. Provide case management from the point of engagement and continue while permanent housing. So the idea of this is to provide case managements from the point of entry into the system all the way after they become housing so that we know that they can retain housing. Reduce violence against people experiencing homelessness and provide safe way to access services. Provide the ability for people experiencing homelessness to meet basic human needs such as food security, medical services, and sanitation, including restroom facilities, and support coordinated homeless needs assessment tools, which is a lot like what I said before. So participate in regional strategies for preventing and reducing homelessness. There's actually, we actually last May brought together the North County jurisdictions to talk about homelessness and try and have a more coordinated effort. And we also work with the county at trying to coordinate efforts, and it's already helped a great deal. We're coordinating with the Alameda County Housing Community Development, behavioral health, and also service providers. We work with Alameda County to provide housing services for chronically homeless and medically fragile. This is a process that is going on right now, and we've actually been successful in identifying a few people who either live on the border of Emeryville or identify as living in Emeryville who have entered this process of finding housing and getting case management. And we're working with the cities of Albany, Berkeley, and Oakland to coordinate and fund outreach, shelter, and housing case management services. And and then the county is looking at funding housing crisis centers, and that's that one-stop shop sort of approach. And the city of Berkeley has actually already put out an RFP for their homeless crisis center. So things are really moving in a coordinated fashion. And then finally, and this is the big one, provide funding for permanent supportive housing, include the provision of permanent supportive housing in our requests for qualifications, and identify sites and funding sources for extremely low-income housing that will house people who are at risk or formerly homeless, and work with residential management companies to remove institutional housing access barriers. And this is actually what happens if somebody fills out and says that they've had a felony conviction, and we don't want them to immediately sort of turn that person away, but look deeper into their history and see if they wouldn't be good candidates for housing. We took the draft strategy to the Housing Committee on December 3rd. And they have the following recommendations. So include independent living workshops in the policy on financial planning. Continue case managements once people attain housing. This, by the way, has already been worked into the policy that you're looking at. And revert to people or persons experiencing homelessness rather than homeless people or persons. This is just a way of providing dignity. They also had some further recommendation, which is to provide independent living skill workshops, and that those should include how to shop effectively with food stamps. These are very detailed. Outreach to homeless populations should include the distribution of lists of resources, which we do. Guidelines should be provided as to when and to whom to provide bus shelters, which we've done, and then provide a permanent restroom to be provided at Joseph Emery Park for both park patrons and homeless population who are currently using the park as a bathroom. So I'm going to talk about that final recommendation, which is the public restroom at Joseph Emery Park. The skate spot construction would be delayed if a restroom were to be included with the design of the skate park. The Public Works Director recommends moving forward with the construction of the skate spot without the restroom, and then to perhaps add the bathroom later on. The restroom could be located in a landscape area adjacent to the south entry, and I'm actually going to show you, this is the location that we were discussing, this south entry. Let's see if I can do this in this general area where these trees are. We have identified a freestanding restroom design that we think would work well, and I think you have the model somewhere for that. If the city desires to include this restroom facility in the skate spot, it could be possible that the city purchase the restroom facility directly from the vendor, and then negotiate a change order to put it in the skate spot. So get it moving, but not slow down the skate spot. This is what it looks like. This is the design, and this is direction that we're requesting to adopt the City of Emeryville homeless strategy and installation of a restroom in the park. Any questions?
Are there any questions for Catherine? I have a comment. I'm maybe the only elected official who actually did homeless outreach as part of my regular day job after I was elected here. So I worked with veterans, and at least at the time that I was employed by the VA, there was a piece of the puzzle that I don't see reflected here that at least the VA was relying on a lot, which is not just permanent supportive housing, which is definitely needed, but transitional housing where in the case of veterans, they could live with each other and participate in some kind of rehab activities and other things that would give them that amount of time for up to 2 years where they could either go through a vocational program or mental health or substance abuse services to get them clean and sober and of right mind again. So I don't see anything in our strategy that really talks about a 2-year transitional housing piece.
Yes, so both the federal government and the county have adopted a housing first model. So there actually isn't any funding anymore for transitional housing. So the idea is to get people into housing first, and then once they're into housing, do the types of case management that you would have done in transitional housing. It's just it's with the rapid rehousing model. What happens is they get people right back into housing, and then they do case management, and then slowly they try and make it so that the person who has been housed can afford the unit that they're in. They don't have to move. So the transitional housing model, people are in some sort of transitional housing, living in a shared sort of situation, but then at some point they have to leave, and it's a big transition, and it's a big jump for people to then be out.
Who pays for this permanent supportive housing? Is it done through tax credits when a project is built, or how is that financed?
So there's various ways. So there's supportive housing that worked like vouchers, so that person pays 30% of their income. There are there is a way of building it into a housing development, like we do Hopwa units, for instance.
Right.
So there are just a few of these units in a larger development, and the development supports the services and rents of the extreme.
Do we have any of those in any of our projects in Emeryville?
I think,
No.
but we can get project-based vouchers from the VASH program, can we not, through HACA?
Yes, we are actually, the 3706 San Pablo Avenue program will be applying for project-based vouchers. They are not specifically for formerly homeless people. They are just project-based vouchers. VASH vouchers don't go to projects. They go to individuals, and then the individuals could use them in a project.
Okay.
Yeah. So just trying to answer all your questions about how this housing happens. And then the other way that it happens is through this rapid rehousing, which is a rental subsidy along with case management. And then the rental subsidy slowly, and it's individual to the household, the rental subsidy slowly is removed as people get on GA, as people get on food stamps, as they work them through the process of getting more and more self-sufficient. Then the subsidy moves away. But the idea is that they actually stay in the housing units. If they have children, their children stay in the school district that they're in. And so it's just a more continuum.
And again, the subsidy is paid for through either Section 8 vouchers or some other?
No, it's actually a pot of money. The rapid rehousing is a pot of money.
Oh, it is a pot of money.
Yeah, it's a pot of money that goes, there's a RFP that goes out, organizations or cities can apply for it, and then there's a process of, and then they run, when they run out, they have to apply for more. It's, and that's what when I talked about the boomerang money at the county, that will be rapid rehousing money, and that'll be a source of money to get people into that program.
Yeah, Nora?
Yeah, I'd just like to commend staff. This is a really good presentation, and I believe it to be a work in progress. But it's a wonderful start. It gets us way past where we are. And I'm very much after having talked to the police chief, I'm very much in favor on this restroom that Maurice has found up in, where was it, Portland? Let's try this, because right now people don't want to walk across Emery Park because it smells like just a restroom.
And there's other locations where people
exactly.
It's not
so
the only location.
I would suggest to the council, I would move that we adopt this homeless strategy and move ahead with the installation of a restroom. That's a motion.
Is there any, before we vote on the resolution, I know there's public comment. So, Mr. Carpio, why don't you come on up?
Well, I want to remind the council that for the last 2 years, I have been hammering the MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and I went every meeting. I didn't scream, but I called them shame and all that, because when I found out through their paperwork, and it was just by accident that they made an accident in publishing that they were paying 300 million. And at that time, they started to be 1 million a day for the demolition of the Old Bay Bridge. And my point was at that time that they should save the Old Bay Bridge for the homeless, because the Old Bay Bridge is fit with all the utility, telephone, sewer, water, whatever. Everything is there. All we needed to do is make partition to make habitat for the homeless. And they, to say the word, they really piss on it. And now they are short of money. They cannot finish the demolition of the Bay Bridge. And now we are creating a new department for the homeless, in which the department is going to eat up all the money for the homeless. And the homeless are not going to get anything unless the department get money. And this is like another Red Cross story, where less than 10% of the money for the Red Cross goes to the wounded and the rest goes to the administration. And this this is really bad. Thank you.
There was a motion, was there a second?
I just wanted to say a couple
yeah.
of things.
People want to talk.
Okay.
Can I make a quick? I
Yeah,
had a quick
I'm
question
not
for
in,
Catherine.
Rich, I'm not ending public comment, so you'll be able to talk.
Yeah, I just
ahead.
had a quick question. Do we know, in terms of demographics of people experiencing homelessness in the region, how many of those folks belong to the LGBTQ community?
We don't.
Okay.
I don't. The only question that's asked in the census is how they identify themselves, if they identify as a transgender. But they don't. Their other orientation issues are not asked.
Okay. I'm just curious because this may have been last year. I was reading a story about the census in San Francisco, and that staff there was shocked to see that between 80 and 90% of the people who were experiencing homelessness in the city actually belong to the LGBTQ community. And when we're talking about barriers to accessing services and barriers to housing, depending on what our demographics are, and if we are, if these are, the same folks, we may want to think about that and add that because they have particular needs and particular experiences. So that would be something I'd be interested in seeing.
So I just want to clarify, just services to them or specific?
Well, services, and also just knowing that the services that are being provided are LGBTQ friendly. Right, so that's important to me. Okay. So that and I'm not an expert on services to the homeless, but I want to understand that a little bit better because I do feel like there can be particular barriers, and I just want to make sure that us living in the Bay Area, right, we're supposed to be the gay Mecca, right? That. We're addressing this for some of our most vulnerable population. Okay.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I know that Las Cruces, New Mexico, had a policy change in their city about homelessness. They decided to take some city land and let homeless individuals stay on the land without moving, and then they focused their services to that place and really have had success with that. Is there anything like that in Alameda County? Has any city or collection of cities decided on this strategy or talked about that strategy?
Well, Albany had a lot of effort trying to create housing. The people at the Bulb can keep them in sort of a community. That wasn't very successful. Outside of Alameda County, the city of San Francisco is trying a new model where they're taking a old school that has been closed down, and they're letting entire encampments, the community that these people live in, one encampment sort of at a time, move into this large open space, but indoors. Mm-hmm. But it's only a 10-day. They're only supposed to be there for 10 days while they try and do extensive outreach to them, engagement with them, and try and get them into housing. But it's a very short window. It hasn't started yet. It's kind of, a lot of people are looking at it to see what happens. I know that the city of Eugene in Oregon also has a model where they provide a open space out of doors, and then they're trying to transition people in that community to more and more structured housing, both physically structured and the rules that come with living in multifamily housing. So, I mean, there's actually quite a bit going on. Santa Rosa actually tried a car where people who were living in cars could all congregate in one place where there was bathrooms and showers. They did abandon that after a while. There were problems. So I think a lot of people are looking at that model. We're watching it. It's interesting.
Mary,
Yeah.
if I could comment, Scott, I think there was an experiment like that down at Cesar Chavez Park, that Sunrise Village, where there were a lot of homeless. The city of Berkeley was trying to get them off of 4th, 5th, and 6th Street, and they opened up that part of Cesar Chavez Park, which is on the eastern part of it. But they had really, really serious problems, criminal problems, attacks, things like that. And they finally, I think it was open for three or 4 years, and they finally had to close it down. They couldn't make it a safe place, and they couldn't make it, in terms of public health, it was really a problem. So that's a good example of a city that tried really hard to create something like that on a large public open space, and had a real problem with it.
Yeah, it's been tried. I think there are people still sort of trying to work their way around it, and we're watching it. Everyone in the kind of homeless community is watching these communities and seeing how successful they are, and and people are looking at that and then trying something else a little different. So
Is Alameda still doing veteran stand-downs?
I don't know what that is. Sorry.
It's basically the creation of a tent city. It's happened at camp parks in Dublin, where dental, medical, there's a court that's brought there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know what you
All
mean.
that
Yeah.
kind of
So
stuff.
Oakland does do that, and I believe Alameda County does do it maybe once a year.
Okay.
Oakland does it, I think, twice a year, and they call it something, I can't remember.
All right. Well, there is still more public comment. Rich, why don't you come up?
Hi, excuse me. Hi, I'm Rich Embro, and I'm concerned about how they're brought into the program. Is it a police action? Do mental health workers bring them into the program? Are they forced to participate? Is it voluntary? It's not, to me, it's not a crime to be homeless, though there may be laws that are against that. There are people who don't like to belong. There are drifters. There's a long tradition. Hobos, for example, have a long tradition. So I don't know, how coercive is the process of integrating the people into the proposed program? That's my question. Thank you.
Judy?
Hi, Judy Timmel. I'm very happy to see there's a coordinated program for dealing with the issue of people experiencing homelessness. I'm a little confused because I don't know what there was before this year, and I don't know how much of this is new. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about a budget, how much money is being set aside for this program, so I think I would really like to see that included. And there are several communities among the homeless population. I'm not sure we've really dealt with Jack mentioned the LGBTQ community, but what about the mental health aspect? How are we going to deal with seriously mentally ill people? They are not able to just go into housing. What about the substance abuse issue? What about the veterans? I think we need to have specific strategies for all of these communities. What about, as Richard mentioned, the travelers who really might refuse services? I think the problem has gotten worse recently, and I don't know how much of this is what we've been doing before, but I think we need to definitely change the way we've been doing it, because the problem is way different now than it has been. So that's all I want to say. Thank you.
I just wanted to address a few of the things that were raised in your earlier comments. I only get 3 minutes, so if you have questions or if I can be assistance to you later, please let me know. On the LGBT question, a couple things that are worth noting. I recently was part of a panel with Stonewall Democrats of the East Bay and Tri-City Healthcare, which provides assistance to transgender and LGBT individuals, as well as Larkin Street in San Francisco were there. And they had some data on Alameda and San Francisco counties that they estimate, based on the services they provide, although the focus at the time was youth homelessness, that roughly 40% of the homeless youth population in the Bay Area is LGBT. So to the question that was raised, having people who are culturally competent in services to people who are LGBT is an extremely important thing, I think. Segueing off that a little bit, I'm a lobbyist, and I spend my time in the Capitol working on solutions for homelessness. And I do want to call your attention to a few things I think that could be helpful to the city. This past year, we worked with the governor and the County Welfare Directors Association of California to get funding for a year of education on the commercial sexual exploitation of children. 3 of the largest sex trafficking rings in the United States are here in California. 2 of them are in the Bay Area and Sacramento. And this year, we have been promised $15 million to allow for coordinated services to the district attorneys and to the local jail system and counties to ensure that children who are being sex trafficked are not prosecuted. It's not a crime. They're a victim, actually, and to make sure that they get child welfare assistance. And so this is important not just to LGBT youth, but a lot of LGBT youth are runaway youth, and they are often preyed upon and made sex trafficking victims. So they're homeless, they've been abandoned or neglected, they're now being victimized by sex. We don't want them to be in the criminal justice system. So being aware locally, because we are in a transit corridor for that, is an extremely important thing. To the tiny homes issue and the idea of rethinking how we address people's needs, I actually met with a senator this morning who is interested in putting money into a pilot program to find space where a county would marry local land to a pilot program dollars that would be funded by the county to provide services. I have been doing a lot of research on this issue, actually, and although Emeryville may not be big enough to address something like that, it's a very interesting concept that's had success in some places. Finally, I just want to emphasize there's a lot of things I could say about the proposal. I thought it was pretty comprehensive for a city our size. I know the mayor was there. We had a great discussion. But I went last year to the state of Utah at the invitation of the governor of Utah to see how Utah does it. Utah has reduced chronic homelessness by over 80% in the last 5 years. And the coordinated entry system, the idea of not having to go to the food shelter or the food kitchen and the homeless shelter and all these different places.
I'm sorry, John. That's your time.
That's it.
This is your bread and butter work.
I know 3 minutes is never enough on this.
So.
I'd like to cede my time to John Bowder so he can finish his presentation. There is a precedence for this, and it's at
Yes,
the pleasure
there is.
of the mayor.
All right. I'll allow it.
Thank you, Mr. Donahue. I don't want to say too much more. I could go on, but the importance of a coordinated entry system, people... My pocket wants to try its ringers out. Coordinated entry system does a couple things. It allows us to ensure that we do not have anyone fall through a crack, but it also ensures that we provide all the services possible. So every service sector has questions that are part of a coordinated entry questionnaire, and it allows us to do warm handoffs as opposed to referrals, which accelerates the time, or reduces the time and accelerates the service that we provide people between different types of needs they have. So when we talk about Oakland and Berkeley doing this, it would be if you want to think about how to constructively spend money as a local government with a fixed budget, outside of building supportive housing, permanent housing that will meet the long-term needs of people who have serious mental health and substance use issues, I would seriously investigate partnering either with Oakland or Berkeley to be a part of that coordinated entry system. We don't have a very large chronic homeless population, but having the access to the services that they're creating and being a partner in that, so that, because it really is a regional issue that needs to be addressed, having the ability to partner with other municipalities, because it's not so clean. It's not like people sleep in one city at all times. Borders get cleaned up, Caltrans gets cleaned up, if you will, and they move people back and forth. So having a space where we share resources is the most cost-effective way to providing a long-term solution. Other than that, I'll stop.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment?
Joan Strausser, I've understood that Oakland, the space from 1500 Park, about 2 blocks down under the bridge there, if you're heading west, that space is basically an Oakland territory and policed by Emeryville. Is that correct? Because that's what somebody told me. You guys don't know? Nobody? Somebody know?
Respond. You want me to respond?
Yeah, because I want to talk about if this needs to be integrated. I don't want to say something incorrect. Yeah.
The area under the bridge is Oakland, and it is technically patrolled by Oakland, but our police department does do security checks as part of their regular patrol pattern.
So if the Emeryville police are doing security checks, then Oakland is also responsible for it. It would seem like one of these regionally cooperative things. And I love the idea about putting this installation of a restroom in a park, but it seems to be a different park on the other side of Target from where this one is, right? It's not this one. So I was down there today. They've built like a fortress. I don't know how many people have seen it. Many of you been there? Because I don't want to repeat. If you've all seen the area there where they got the fortress of all of the shopping carts. Right. But I don't see a porta potty, a restroom, anything there. And it would seem like if they're doing security checks from the Oakland Emeryville police, but it's also being done by Oakland, that Oakland and Emeryville should try to coordinate efforts to just get a quick porta potty put in there right away now before it gets worse, because it can't be great. And the people down there today were saying they've been there like 6 months already. So I can't imagine after being there 6 months that it's in great shape. So I would just like to propose that Emeryville coordinate with Oakland, since the policing is seeming to be somewhat coordinated, and coordinate in other ways.
Yeah.
So that area, which is right close to 1500 Park and all those nice Pilates studios and things like that, can be secured.
All right, I don't see any other public comments. So there was a motion to approve the
I'll second that. I think
resolution.
that Nora's motion that we need the restroom right away in particular is at the
And the
skate
thing
spot.
is, it's a beginning, and we need to get started on this.
Yeah.
Call the question.
Is there anybody opposed to this? All right, that's by acclamation. So.